Welcome, everyone, to our latest installment of the Spark Seminar Series. I'm Sue Tappan, a member of the Spark DRC. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Kevin Kilgore from Case Western Reserve University. Today's seminar touches on one of the most exciting frontiers in biomedical engineering, the use of implantable devices to restore and enhance function in people living with serious neurological conditions. For patients with spinal cord injuries, paralysis, or disorders of the autonomic nervous system, these technologies can be transformative, returning independence and improving quality of life that might otherwise be lost permanently. One effort addressing these challenges head-on is the COSMIC project, a project funded by the SPARC program. Kevin's going to tell us a little bit more about that, but briefly, at its core, it is a modular implantable system, and it's already in use in people with spinal cord injuries. It's capable of recording and stimulation across many channels simultaneously. The goal of this entire project is a fully documented, publicly available catalog of high channel count implantable components, freely accessible to academic researchers and startups alike. This open science philosophy extends to data as well. Cosmic researchers have already contributed data sets to the Spark portal, including recent work demonstrating that a single electrode on the vagus nerve can both increase and decrease parasympathetic tone to the heart, achieving a closed-loop heart rate control. And on that note, if you are working on data, models, or devices relevant to neural interfaces in autonomic neuroscience, I want to encourage you to explore the Spark portal. Share what you have, use what others have shared. This kind of open, cumulative science is how we move faster and get better tools to patients sooner. Dr. Kilgore's work embodies that ethos, and we're lucky to have him here to tell us about it. Spark connects the body and the brain with open resources that support research into systems physiology and neural control in the periphery, such as our computational platform, OSPARC, and the annotated maps, which are generated from SCAN, our knowledge base of peripheral connectivity. Spark is a member of the AWS Open Data Sponsorship Program, which enables all public data sets, like the one that was just published by the COSMIC team, to be stored and accessed without cost. We ensure interoperability across diverse contributions to advance basic science, clinical applications, and bioelectronic devices. Dr. Kilgore will frame the landscape for us today, the extraordinary potential of implantable devices, the life cycle challenges that come with them, and how Cosmic and other entities are working to meet these challenges in a way that benefits the whole community. Please welcome Dr. Kilgore.
All right. Thank you, Sue. Let's see. I need to share these slides here. All right. So today I'm going to talk about this new nonprofit, relatively new nonprofit, GIVE-A-HAND.tech, which we established about a year ago to address this issue of abandoned neural devices, which I'll be talking about. I am the president of the board of directors of GIVE-A-HAND.tech, so I am biased entirely. I retired a few months ago in part to devote my time to this because I think it's a really important problem for our field, and I didn't think that there were other good alternatives out there. So today I'm going to present our approach. We don't necessarily believe we have the only way to do this, but we think we have one way that is practical and can actually be accomplished. So our mission the mission of GIVE-A-HAND.tech is to serve as an adoptive home, if you will, for people who have or could benefit from abandoned implantable medical devices. of any sort, but obviously highly relevant to those working in neuroprosthetics and in the spark field, peripheral nervous system, central nervous system, and so on. GIVE-A-HAND.tech will enable people to gain access to and keep benefiting from these devices for the remainder of their lifetimes. It is a difficult challenge, a difficult mission, but we think we have some plans and strategies in place that will enable us to do this. Obviously, only time will tell. We are a 501c3 public charity. Our board of directors right now is myself, Nathan Mikowski, Ann Bryden, and Brian Smith, all of whom have careers in implantable neuroprosthetics. Right now, our backgrounds have a focus in spinal cord injury, but obviously our devices have much broader application than that. So what is abandoned technology? What is the definition? So I'm going to just give a working definition, a practical definition that we use at GIVE-A-HAND.tech. I know that others have worked on more detailed definitions, but I'm just thinking of it on a very practical level here. So people get an implanted device as part of a study, or maybe they get it as a commercial product. It doesn't really matter. But the person who gets the implant gains some benefit from that technology. Frequently, it's benefit that they can't gain any other way. And if you're out there and you are in the device field, implantable device field, you know that often implantable devices are the last resort in medicine. So usually people who get implantable devices have exhausted all of the pharmacological and surgical, et cetera, options that are out there. And the device is the last of the line. And for some people, the device is revolutionary in their lives. In other words, it gives them a significant increase in function. It gives them pain relief. It resolves their disease to the extent that they become more independent. So there's a whole variety of applications. And it can be quite significant, the change in the person's life. But then, unfortunately, there can be situations where the researcher or company is no longer able or willing to support the technology. For example, a lot of these are startup companies introducing a new technology. It's a long road, it's very difficult, and a lot of times it just doesn't work for some reason or other, and the company goes out of business, for example. And now that person who has an implanted device that's changed their life, they run into a situation where they need some kind of support. A wire breaks or something needs to be reprogrammed or whatever it is. And now they have no one to turn to for support. And ultimately, they're at risk of losing the function that they gained as a result of their implanted device through no fault of their own. And that is what we are calling abandoned implantable technology. So for the purposes of this morning's talk, that's what I'm talking about when I refer to this. As far as GIVE-A-HAND.tech goes, we don't really care why this happens. Obviously, it would be great to have efforts that keep it from happening, but all we care about is that there are people out there who need this support and can't get it. And we hope to be able to provide that support long term for these individuals. I didn't know that the timing of this talk would coincide with an NIH release, a draft document on post-trial needs. It came out about 2 weeks ago. Here's the notice. If you haven't seen it yet, I encourage you to take a look at it. If you have any interest in this topic, and I'm guessing if you're listening to this, you do, I strongly encourage you to take a look at that, read it, read the document, the draft guidance, and you need to provide a response by May 25th. So you have a couple months to put a response together. Um, and I certainly encourage that. I am going to give my unvarnished thoughts in the next few slides. So if you don't want to be biased by me, maybe you have to turn the sound off. But I think there's a lot to be learned from this guidance, but it also illustrates what I feel are the reasons why the issue really doesn't have a solution at present. All right. So one of the things that was helpful, so I just thought I'd pull it out, is um, a description of what should happen in an ideal world. And this is from that notice from the draft guidance. If the investigational device has a favorable risk to benefit profile, trial participants should be offered the option of keeping the device after trial participation ends. This is as opposed to one alternative is at the end of every trial, you always remove the device, regardless of the situation. My view of that is yes, they should. I'm not an ethicist, I'm an engineer, so maybe I'm not allowed to say what people should do, but to me, it just seems like a basic human decency. You know, because devices can sometimes be life-changing in terms of the function that they provide or the benefits or pain relief that they provide, um, it it seems wrong to me to take it away. Um, we've had people in my career, I worked with people with spinal cord injury, providing hand function through an implanted neuroprosthesis. We had people who, because they were more independent, they were able to move out of a skilled nursing facility and into their own apartment or their own home. We had one woman who was able to regain custody of her daughter as a result of being able to demonstrate to the court her increased independence. And so to then turn around and take that technology away after people have made these life-changing decisions is is wrong. And so at GIVE-A-HAND.tech, we're trying to set up ways in which people could reasonably keep using their technology, have support throughout their lifetimes. Okay, so and we'll get to that. I just want to point out the main difficulties in doing that. And one of the things that I found in reading the papers and listening to the discussion panels, etc., is that some of the key issues are not addressed. Now, in the guidance document from NIH, there are three general issues, and we're really only going to be focusing on one of them. The guidance document also talks about device removal. We are not, GIVE-A-HAND.tech is not interested in that option. That usually occurs during or shortly after the trial anyway. Medical issues are important, obviously, but there are generally medical pathways to take care of those issues as long as some guidance can be given to the treating physicians. So GIVE-A-HAND.tech is not going to be providing medical treatment. It may provide some assistance or guidance or helpful information to physicians and surgeons who are treating the individuals who have a problem, but it won't be providing medical treatment. What GIVE-A-HAND.tech will be doing is trying to assist those individuals who want to continue to use their device. That is the focus and mission of GIVE-A-HAND.tech. So I was pretty excited when I first saw this a couple of weeks ago. The title of this NIH document is Resources to Support Implantable Device Trials. And I thought, well, maybe there's like going to be a grant program to do long-term support. But no, that's not what it means. It's really just a guidance about how you might make your own plans for post-trial needs. It does describe some of the resources needed, and those are not provided, specifically not provided by NIH. But it does describe the problem extremely well. So it's worth reading if you're interested in this topic. There are 6 elements in this guidance document that should be addressed in a long-term plan. 6 that are identified, and these are good, but they only indirectly mention the top 3 critical issues. And I think that is part of the problem. And we'll get to that in one more slide. That it also proposes some solutions that don't address the critical problems and are likely impractical anyway, that institutions or companies would provide the monetary support for this kind of activity. So the elements listed in the draft, I'm not going to go through these except to just say obviously you have to have a plan, you have to have, look at the risks and benefits and the needs of the individuals who are going to be, if they're going to be using the device long term, what are their needs going to be? Number 5 is the financial plan, and this is where things fall apart. So the financial plan is listed here. And basically identifying various sources of financing to cover post-trial costs. And I think in most cases these are difficult, but the real problem is that the finances are not the key issue, not the major issue in this in the effort to try to support these individuals for the rest of their life. So if you learn nothing from this talk, this is the most important slide here, I think, at the present time at least, to recognize that there's more to this problem than is typically discussed. These are the top 4 issues. Number 4 is financing. So that is pretty obvious, but the problem is most people put that at the top of their list. And there are 3 things that are more important than financing. And if you don't have the top 3, having all the money in the world doesn't help you at all. That's the reason this is such a difficult problem. So number 3 is the surgical and technical expertise. So frequently what we're talking about are fairly unique implantable devices. Now, there are some basic principles that we all follow, but for example, knowing how to program a particular implantable device probably requires certain technical expertise. Knowing how to surgically modify a particular device probably requires some surgical expertise that is not available in general. So somehow that expertise needs to be maintained over time. And that is more important than money because, again, you can have all the money in the world, but you can't buy the expertise if it's not there. So that needs to be maintained. That's one of the things that GIVE-A-HAND.tech will do. The number 2 most important thing is having available technology. So this is probably pretty obvious, this one, but you need to have the technology if you're going to be making, replacing things that break, etc. Again, if, for example, a device is abandoned because a company went out of business, and that company was the manufacturer of the device, then that device is no longer being manufactured, it's no longer available, and in general, typically the information that was used to build the technology also disappears along with the company that went out of business. So again, having the financing is great, but what are you going to buy? Where are you going to buy the replacement IPG when the batteries reach their end of life? So that's number 2. the top thing, which I find odd that I don't know that I've ever read this being addressed in any detail, is that we are talking about an implanted medical device. These are regulated by the FDA. We all know that. Uh, any kind of long-term support is still regulated by the FDA. It's not like the FDA no longer has any jurisdiction over things once they're past 3 years or outside of a study. Um, so that has to be addressed. And one of the things that happens when a device becomes abandoned is that whatever regulatory permission was gained, let's say an IDE or whatever it might be, um, the maintenance of that is lost, right? The company's no longer there. No one's maintaining the IDE. No one's filing the annual reports. No one's tracking adverse events, those kinds of things. So that is another service that GIVE-A-HAND.tech will be providing, and that is maintaining the regulatory permission um, for the lifetime of the individuals who are out there using the device and who might need repairs over time. All right, so those are the key things, and the question is for GIVE-A-HAND.tech, and which I hope to talk about now in the remainder of my time, is how in the world are we going to achieve those top three things? The financing obviously is challenging, but it's the regulatory issues, the making technology available, and the expertise. Those are the things that really are required in order to have a viable long-term plan to support these individuals so they can keep using their technology. Um, I guess I put this in here. This is, this is just an example of one of the solutions that you find presented. This idea that, a company would put, I don't know, a bunch of money in escrow or something in advance. So I say this is a bad solution. Maybe I was, a little too mean there. Maybe bad is not the right word. Impractical, ineffective, maybe would be better here. But the point is, again, first of all, getting the money before a trial starts, having your investors, I don't know, put $10 million into an escrow account in case you fail, seems like a non-starter to me. But the point is, even if you had that money and the device becomes abandoned, now you're still trying to buy a device that doesn't exist, and you're trying to recover the regulatory requirements that have been abandoned as well. So again, those things um, need to be addressed. All right, so I'm going to stop talking about that and start talking about a solution. We had experience in Cleveland. I'm not going to go through the details in the slide, but just put it here for reference for people. But in Cleveland, we experienced this. Our first generation technology, which was became the freehand system in the late 90s, and was implanted in people with spinal cord injury for hand function, and it became an abandoned technology. And we experienced a lot of the difficulties, very fundamental practical difficulties that occur when that happens. And when you're trying to enable these individuals to keep using their implanted device, it becomes very difficult. Even something as simple as having a point of contact. So one of the simple things that GIVE-A-HAND.tech can do is serve as a general point of contact, an enduring point of contact that if an individual with an implanted device can't get a hold of their researcher or their company or whoever it might be that was supporting them, that they have a place they can contact to talk to someone to figure out, well, how do I get support now? What do I do now that I can't get a hold of the original people who worked with me? All right, so we can do better than that. The general concept here, I just want to put this out because I think if you think about the sentence I'm about to utter, it's impossible. And yet I think there's a way to do it. Okay, so I acknowledge that there are no magic bullets here. What we propose is going to take some sacrifices on everyone's part. But here's what we're envisioning is that 50 years from now, let's say there's an abandoned technology today, and someone is using it and they're gaining benefit, and now 50 years down the road, their IPG is the battery is at end of life and needs to be replaced. The idea is that a surgeon could go to a shelf somewhere, pull off a sterilized device that's not expired, that is still active, working. They could implant that in that person, replace the IPG in that person. Um, that person could recover. They could get whatever necessary programming there might need to be to restore function for that device. And that all of this would be done under the necessary regulatory requirements. That's what we would like to see down the road. Now, I need to point this out. I'll come at the very end. I'll come back to this issue, but GIVE-A-HAND.tech's strategy is to put a plan in place before the trial starts, before the first implant is performed. And I know that's difficult. It's hard. I know from experience, there's a lot of things happening when you're trying to start a trial. There's a million things you have to get put into place, and having to put one more thing, especially something that is really only going to be necessary if you fail in a way, or if you at least can't continue in a way. I know that's difficult, but I think that for the sake of the individuals who are going to risk themselves, be part of the clinical trial, gain benefit, it's worth it to put the strategy in place so that they can maintain and use the device even after the trial ends. So I'll go through that. We have a website, GIVE-A-HAND.tech. That's pretty easy. If you want to email us with ideas, comments, if you have a new strategy, we'd love to hear it. Either email support@giveahand.tech, or you can email me directly, Kilgore@giveahand.tech. All right, so the basic strategy here that we're implementing is, as I mentioned, an upfront contract. Upfront meaning it's happening before the first implant. And it involves, first of all, the regulatory piece. And what we're asking researchers or companies to do is to include in their initial IDE, let's just assume it's a research device for the moment. There's some other issues if it's a commercial device already. But let's just assume that it's a new device under an IDE. And so the researcher is putting together their IDE. What they have to add to their IDE as a supplement, or maybe it's filed as a second IDE, it doesn't really matter. They have to include a provision for long-term technology availability. And again, long-term means 50 years from now, you can pull something off a shelf and use it. How in the world do you do that? How do you show GIVE-A-HAND.tech that you have that plan in place? There's two major options, and we'll talk about those in the next two slides. So that's a key piece, because that's the regulatory piece and that's the technology availability piece. Those are the top two issues that we're trying to address. GIVE-A-HAND.tech then agrees to provide support to the users if the device becomes abandoned. And if it does become abandoned, GIVE-A-HAND.tech then assumes ownership, or sponsorship probably is a better word here in this case, of the IDE, of this long-term technology availability IDE. And basically this becomes a long-term follow-up IDE. So GIVE-A-HAND.tech, in sponsoring the IDE, will not be doing efficacy studies, for example, right? Because that's no longer necessary. But what it will be doing is maintaining the individuals who are already using the technology, tracking adverse events as necessary, filing the annual reports, doing those kinds of things, those kinds of activities, which for many studies is not a significant amount of work, but it has to be done by somebody who knows what they're doing, right, and has access to the information. So it can be fairly straightforward task, but it requires some knowledge and expertise and background. GIVE-A-HAND.tech will also take ownership of any remaining technology inventory. This will be described in the agreement. When it comes to the expertise, GIVE-A-HAND.tech, at least initially, and at least for the early part of the follow-up, GIVE-A-HAND.tech will lean heavily on the remaining, the original researcher, the original surgeons, the original engineers, therapists, whoever, nurses who were involved in the study in providing support for the users. We think that researchers, investigators, surgeons, etc., therapists, engineers, that they all care about these individuals that they've been working with, and they would like to enable these individuals to keep using their technology. The problem is they have, as an individual, they can't take care of the regulatory issues. As an individual, they can't guarantee that the technology is available. They're not device manufacturers. And so, and also they don't have the financing. So GIVE-A-HAND.tech will come alongside them and say, we'll take care of the regulatory issues. We'll take care of the technology availability problem, and we'll provide the financing so that you can do the support. So I called it here helping without overhead. And we think that in some cases, this might take the form of a grant that is issued to to the researchers so that they can keep doing long-term support. All right, so that's the basic strategy. Now let's go back to this 1A here, these two options. How in the world do you keep technology going for 50 years? All right, so there's option A and option Z that I'm going to present. And I just called them that because they're two extremes. And certainly you could imagine that there could be a gray area between these two extremes that I'm going to present. So option A is banking the technology. Option Z is having a backup technology. And we'll get to that in the next slide. And then obviously you could imagine that you might combine these types of things. But first, let's talk about banking the technology. So I think most people, when they think about how would you do this, how would you make technology available, they're imagining this option, which is that you're banking the technology. And it's okay. It might work for, like, if you have a study that's like 3 to 5 people, maybe a very small study, and then it comes to an end, this option might work. As you get to a larger study, this becomes pretty impractical. The idea is, as you're going along in the study, you put aside technology that can be used as backup or replacement technology for the individuals who are part of the study. And so, and really, you have to anticipate their lifetimes. Now, if you're studying people who are 90 years old, they probably will only live 10 to 15 years, so you only need to provide that. When we work with people with spinal cord injuries, often they're in their 20s, and they could definitely live 50 years with their implanted technology. So we need to look ahead. So it has to do with, of course, what the needs are. If, for example, if you have a battery-powered implantable device, and that battery is going to last, let's say, 5 years or 10 years, whatever it is, then you need to estimate, well, over a 50-year lifetime, we're going to have to replace it, likely have to replace it 5 times. So each time we implant someone, we need to put 5 of those off on a shelf. The problem there is that, well, first of all, sterilization is a real issue here. There's no such thing that I know of sterilization that has a 50-year expiration time, although that would be fantastic. So you'll have to re-sterilize or have a sterilization protocol that you implement, 50 years from now. That's a challenge. That's definitely a challenge. Batteries are probably shelf life limited, at least as far as I know. All batteries are going to have some lifetime over which at some point you're not going to implant that device. You've got to replace it. So, maybe you have to have an inductively powered option where you don't have the battery inside the device. You have to run it from an inductive link. Those are options, but each one of those, of course, carries a certain cost with it. The other thing that makes this difficult is that the banked technology, the backup inventory, has to be donated in real time to GIVE-A-HAND.tech. In other words, you can't just have your own supply and say, okay, we're going to designate the ones, in this box, we'll designate those to as backup devices. Because obviously you might be in a situation where you need a device and you say, well, I'll just borrow from my backup devices. That's too easy. That's too difficult. Um, so the other thing is, if let's say it's a company, then the company goes out of business. GIVE-A-HAND.tech can't be standing in the bankruptcy line, waiting to see if they get their implantable devices to do the long-term support. So they have to be owned by GIVE-A-HAND.tech up front. And so that's difficult, obviously, to do. Again, if it's a larger study, this I think becomes pretty expensive and pretty impractical. Um, Also, if the technology, this is part of the agreement made with the investigators or the company, that if the technology becomes abandoned, all the documentation becomes open source. And all is probably an overstatement in this particular case. But the reason we're doing this is because we being GIVE-A-HAND.tech, needs to take advantage of the community of knowledgeable people out there who can fix technology. And there are a lot of people who can fix implantable technology, especially the external components like chargers and things. And those tend to be the things that break the most over the lifetime of a person using it. Um, that those individuals, if they're gonna, fix a cable, they need the wiring diagram, for example. So the idea is that GIVE-A-HAND.tech would make that information broadly available to the community so that people, if they're interested and willing to volunteer to do some of these activities, would be able to do it and would have the information necessary. All right. So again, that's a bit of a sacrifice that only comes into play if the technology becomes abandoned. But in our experience, companies will be reluctant to do that only because they want to hold on to their thing, hoping, I don't know, that they're going to sell it. But the thing is that it becomes abandoned. They go out of business or something like that, or decide to do something else. Okay, so that's option A, banking the technology. Option Z is having a backup technology. And this idea is to use a suitable open source modular implant system, a Lego kit, if you will, as an alternative for providing the same functionality as the device that's being studied. This, I'm sure, is a weird concept to most of you because why would you ever have a backup technology? Well, the reason that you have a backup technology is a technology that could be available off the shelf 50 years from now, even if your company, your manufacturer goes out of business and is no longer making it. So the backup technology is what is controlled by GIVE-A-HAND.tech. And part of the goal of GIVE-A-HAND.tech is to make sure that backup technology is available. So this takes the responsibility out of the investigator's hands and puts it into GIVE-A-HAND.tech's hands to make sure that this technology is available down the road. There are issues. This is not simple to do. This does mean that the IDE is going to have an additional bit of information about the backup technology. It's going to have to be also approved by the FDA, even if, and likely, it never gets used, right? So if the trial is successful, this becomes a commercial product, it's never abandoned, then you never have to use the backup technology. So it only comes into play if the system is abandoned. Um, so in this case, um, the relevance of the backup technology has to be maintained, which means if the investigator makes changes, let's say they change their software in their current device, then they also have to validate that in the backup device. So again, there's some costs here. They're not overwhelming, but it does require a strong commitment to making sure that you have a viable long-term plan. Okay, so we'll talk about that a little bit, but so again, there's options B to Y, which would be combinations, and I think this is more likely that during, let's say, the first 5 years or so, that there could be the bank of the technology that could be used as backups while they're still viable, and that then for longer term situations, 10 years down the road, now we're going to use this backup technology. All right, so there could be combinations. So this requires an interaction between GIVE-A-HAND.tech and the investigators or the company who are starting the study, and all of these are worked out in advance. So I mentioned that this backup technology is needs to be a modular open source technology. I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about the system that we have in Cleveland. We think it's perfectly suited for this, but it is not the only option, and I'll talk about that at the end here. But I just want to give you a sense for what in the world are you talking about with a backup technology? Well, here's one example. The Cosmic system, Cleveland's open source modular implant innovators community. This is obviously, this was funded by the SPARC program. Brian Smith and Cindy Chestic are the PIs of this project, and it's housed at Case Western Reserve University, Metro Health Medical Center, and University of Michigan, and then we have partners at UCLA and University of Wisconsin. Okay, I said we. I'm sorry. I just retired. I'm not PI anymore. All right. So anyway, I used to be, but that was a while ago. All right. So the Cosmic system is fundamentally modular. I hate to say a Lego kit, but frankly, it is a Lego kit of implantables. And the great thing about Legos is that, they're always available and you can build all sorts of things with them. In the end, they're not the most beautiful of it's not the most beautiful way to build a car or build a bridge or whatever, right? Or a building. But functionally, it works. And so as a backup plan, that's the idea here, is that um, uh, this technology can be used to mimic the functions of whatever your technology might be that is uniquely designed for a particular application. So the Cosmic system is modular in that there's a power module, a wired network through which all of these other modules communicate. There are modules that do different functions. So we started out with a stimulator module, an EMG recording module, and various electrodes and things like that. You can go to the website cosmic.org and find these things and find out all the information that you need and the specifications, for example, of these different components. And you can add components onto the network. And so it gives you a pretty high capacity technology depending on how you mix and match. So again, just like Legos, you can build a lot of things with just a few blocks as long as you can keep duplicating those blocks onto the system. Now that system that I just showed you is already that's already been through the IDE process. It's been in humans. Actually, it's approaching, I think, 10 years since the first implant. Actively used, I think probably about 8 years. Sorry, I don't have this information right in front of me right now, but so it's been implanted, it's been through the regulatory process. It has some real life experience with it, which we think is a huge advantage. Here's just some examples. It's been the applications have been focused on hand function and trunk function and spinal cord injury. And so it is battle tested, if you will. as part of the cosmic funding, we were able to add some additional functions that we think the community, the research community, will need. So if you're thinking about, well, how does this mimic my device? Well, you might need some of these new devices, and these are nearing completion in their design process. None of them have been through the IDE process yet. So none of these have yet been implanted in a human, but we're working on that, and we hope to make that available. Again, all of this is made open source. Once those modules are available, the new ones that we're working on, um, the system really has a lot of capabilities, and I won't, belabor these points. There's a lot of different things you can do with it. Um, and so we think that it can mimic a lot of systems out there. In addition, if you have something that is very specific that, cannot be mimicked by the current system, it's open source. You always have the opportunity to add another module that can do some additional functions, whatever it might be, a new stimulation waveform, a new sensing modality, whatever it might be. And we obviously are hoping that the community continues to build on this and continues to add to this open source technology. Just quickly, the open source principles for this, it's maximally permissive. You can use the information on the website for any purpose, including commercialization. We try to not put any limits on this. We just ask for the attribution. And there's a whole ecosystem. Obviously, we're not just talking about hardware, we're talking about software, we're talking about the fabrication procedures, and also the regulatory. So, for example, our original IDE, investigational device exemption, is fully open source. It's available to you. If you go to the website, you can download it all if you're really hard up for something to read. But what it does allow you to do is see, our design description, the testing, the risk benefit assessments, things like that. All right. So that's not the main purpose of my talk today, but I just wanted to put that out there as this is a potential backup technology. And one thing that's kind of important is again, the regulatory piece has to be made as, I don't know what to call it, maybe user-friendly as possible. If that can be, if you can use those words with with trying to put together an IDE. But our intention is to have an open source master file existing at the FDA that covers the cosmic system. So when you try to, the idea is when you want to add this system as a backup, you can reference all of the testing that was done as an open source master file. There are a number of technologies where the cosmic system could completely duplicate a technology, let's say a deep brain stimulation system. It could completely duplicate that technology. And so in that case, there may be very little additional testing that you might need to do. That would be our hope anyway. And there are obviously going to be some cases where you're going to have to do, let's say, some testing on software because you're going to have to update the software. So again, there's some effort here that's going to have to be taken by the researcher in collaboration with GIVE-A-HAND.tech. So, back to this backup option, you have the ability to reference the open source device master file and modify the system as necessary. So a few questions here. I think one of the questions is, can this cosmic system really mimic the function of all other implantable devices? And the quick answer is, of course not. I mean, that's impossible, but it can do a lot. So as a Lego kit, deep brain stimulators, spinal cord stimulators, motor neural prostheses, a lot of vagal nerve stimulators. When you start looking at things like cochlear implants or retinal implants, I wish that we could mimic those. At present, there really is not a way in which this technology would be able to replace those. So in some ways, this defines the limit of what GIVE-A-HAND.tech, at least in our current strategy, of what we can do. So if the cosmic system or other open source systems can mimic the technology, then at least we have a plan for a backup technology. Um, so we hope to keep expanding this, but that is where we're at now, and that's the way we're going to proceed. So, not that you need these diagrams here, but you can imagine a deep brain stimulation that combines the power module and the stimulator module, or a spinal cord stimulation system that does the same. Maybe it needs two of these modules, whatever it is. So there's a lot of flexibility with that system. Um, Now, we are not limited just to the cosmic system. There's other open source technologies that might serve as backup technology, but it needs to be open source because it can't be taken away, right? So GIVE-A-HAND.tech has to know that, this will be available 50 years from now. The other Hornet grant through the Spark program was to the team at USC and Medali and Metapace. They have the Open Nerve system, and you can take a look at that, opennerve.org. I would say, I don't think they would be offended if I say that it's kind of more of a standard IPG type of design. The modularity is in the electrodes and sensors that you can connect into this. But again, this might serve as a way to mimic whatever system it is that you're testing. So that is also an option out there. We're not tied to any one technology. We just need to have the assurance that it's open and available for the community to use. Um, Maybe I probably need to wrap up and give time for a few questions, but I have one question that I feel like, again, people will be asking: how is it possible that this system is going to be available, the cosmic system available forever, or at least 50 years? 50 years. Let's not say forever. We'll say 50 years. So I just use this as an example just to pull it out here. Um, Here's a computer, e-machines, which is, according to the big tag on the front, is never obsolete. I bet none of you have these never obsolete computers still in your lab. We had a bunch of them for a while. I guess we believed that it was never going to be obsolete. I don't know. But is that possible? How can technology hardly lasts 5 years, let alone 50 years? Well, so I'll just use this as an example. This is our freehand device, our 8-channel implant. Um, it was first implanted in 1986, 13 years before e-machines even came out. The most recent revision surgery was just 3 years ago, 4 years ago now. So we're still able to surgically fix this system, even after all of this time. And the most recent active use of this system was April 8th, 2026, meaning there are people out there right now who use this device every day, still. 30 years, I think the longest function now is probably closing in on 32 years, I think, something like that. There are a number of people who are in the 30-year range now. So the point, and this was without planning ahead and saying, let's make a technology that's going to last 50 years. I think with the appropriate planning and the appropriate decisions made for backwards compatibility and things like that, a commitment to that kind of thinking, that it is not unreasonable to think that in 50 years you could still do this. I'm not saying it's easy or that it's guaranteed. I'm just saying that it is feasible. And that's one of the things that we'll be working on at GIVE-A-HAND.tech. All right, so there's a sustainability plan here. Obviously involves GIVE-A-HAND.tech, maintaining that access to the open source and maintaining the ability to pull it off the shelf. And obviously we have to work with our supply chain management to make sure that that happens. GIVE-A-HAND.tech will not be necessarily the manufacturer. That's not the plan, but it will have the information to work with manufacturers. One final note here is that there are, of course, a lot of people out there who already have an abandoned device and they want to keep using it. And no one made a proactive plan to get that set up. Um, GIVE-A-HAND.tech can't necessarily solve that, but we are going to do whatever we can to try to help those individuals. If necessary, if it's available, we'll assume sponsorship of existing IDEs, things like that. But this is very difficult, and it's going to be very, technology specific and person specific, actually. Um, but one of the things we do hope to do is support the research teams to do their own long-term support, meaning issue grants to individuals, to researchers to do this long-term support. We are not quite ready. I wish we were ready to announce that. We're not ready yet, but please keep checking our website. By the end of the summer, I expect that we will have a request for applications. These will be small applications where, and they will be initially pretty resource limited because we don't have a lot of resources yet. But as we grow and have more resources available, we hope to expand that. But that's one way in which we can do kind of this support of people with existing abandoned devices right now who are out there and who are struggling. So acknowledge limits. I just put this up there so you have it as a reference. Obviously, there are limits to the strategy. If the design that's put in is a bad design and it keeps failing, we will not be able to fix that or change that. So GIVE-A-HAND.tech is a public charity with the goal of essentially turning the abandonment problem into a money problem by addressing these top three issues, which is technology availability, the regulatory allowance or clearance, if you will, and the maintaining the technical and surgical expertise. Just want to acknowledge, of course, the NIH Spark program, the Hornet program, which allowed us to get this technology set up, and the team over in the Cosmic group who are still working away trying to get these things done, and GIVE-A-HAND.tech. If you have thoughts, ideas, complaints, or new ways of doing things, please send me an email. I'd love to hear from you. And I think that is it.
Kevin, thank you so much. That was very compelling and exciting, really, this idea of transforming the way we think about the lifespan of devices to extend them and make sure that they reach the full limit of their capability. We have a number of questions already that have been posed by attendees, and I encourage anybody else who's got a burning question to drop it right in the Q&A panel, and we'll pass them on to Kevin. So Kevin, here's your first question. I'd like to know the rough number of abandoned neuromod tech that is out there and implanted in people. I know second sight is the elephant in the room, but that's the length of my list. So this person wants to know what you know.
Yeah. So I can tell you with great confidence that there's a lot more than second sight out there, for sure. We actually were hoping to, and I think some of my colleagues are working on putting together a grant to try to study this and find out that information. I don't think anyone knows. The FDA might have this data, at least for the US, right? But it would only be for the US. What about worldwide? Who would know what devices are out there? And so every time I read an article, I find out, oh, there's another device that's out there that's abandoned, a device for migraines or the DBS device for depression, those kinds of things. So it could be a lot that are already out there. And that's partly why I say that, GIVE-A-HAND.tech probably cannot solve the existing problem. I mean, we can make a dent in it, but what we really have to do is address these things up front so that down the road, there will be plans in place and it won't be the kind of problem that we have right now, where we don't even know how many people are out there. I don't want to take too long with these answers, but let me just say one thing in answer to that question, simple thing. This has to do with our technology, the freehand technology that we developed, transferred to the company Neurocontrol. we don't even know to this day how many people and who were implanted with the freehand system. We have a pretty good idea of a rough number, about 225 people were implanted. But we don't know all of them because the company went out of business. The company took that information with them and it died with them. So the point is that there are people out there, likely people out there, who don't know that they could contact, researchers in Cleveland and get some support because that company went out of business. So getting a handle on this problem and what the needs are for those individuals is very important. Um, and so hopefully we'll be able to do that as we go forward.
That makes that makes me think, do you anticipate that GIVE-A-HAND.tech is going to also tackle the advocacy angle of this to make patients more aware of this opportunity? Because of those 225 people, if they only know that they got the device from this one company, like how would they
Yeah.
know where to go to get help, like you said?
So I think that's going to have to be organic to some extent because a lot of the linkages with the people who would have been involved with those, let's say doing the implant or whatever, the linkages get lost over time. And so we're talking about something that was implanted now 25, 30 years ago. Are the people who even put it in originally and remember that there's people out there, are they still around even? So, our plan is to keep presenting this at, seminars like this or, at scientific meetings, get the word out. And then also talk to advocacy groups, start to make them aware of our existence. Um, we feel like we're just getting off the ground, so we're a little afraid of waving our flag too much. We can only take on so much at the moment. We're trying to get, all of our different programs in order so that we can handle a broader community. But ultimately, yes, we do want to get the word out, especially to those research participants who might be out there and are really looking for some kind of support and don't have it.
Right, right. We have another question that has popped up, and it is, are there any lessons learned from the cochlear implant field that could be applied to the question that is central here?
Um, I'm not sure what the lessons would be. One lesson is be successful, right? So obviously the cochlear implants, the long-term support for them is by the companies that are still alive and active and doing it. And that's a fantastic success. Um, and I'm pretty sure that everybody, I hope everybody looks at the cochlear, story and tries to take away from it things that would enable any other technology to be successful. But, as someone mentioned, the second sight thing situation, at least, as it was a couple of years ago, is, that seemed like that was poised for a huge success, and yet it didn't. And so I think that there's probably no way to prevent the possibility that things are going to become abandoned. I, you know, the medical device industry is a tough one, as tough as any, I think, to survive in. And so I just think there's always going to be situations, no matter what you do, no matter what you plan, put plans you put in place in advance, there's always going to be situations where some things just don't work out, sometimes for no good reason, but people end up with abandoned technology. So I think there's always going to be a role for GIVE-A-HAND.tech and other, hopefully other groups that can step in and provide support.
Thank you. So speaking more broadly about neuromodulation, one of the uh, great aspects of neuromodulatory devices is the precision of the effect, right? So as
Yes.
opposed to a pharmacological effect, which is systemic, a neuromodulatory device allows very targeted and precise modulation where it's needed. And so you've got this challenge of um, a device that is implanted or within you that has a lifespan, but at the same time, it can do things that can't be done by other therapies. Are there, do you see a future or an impact in the methods to make a device more applicable to other areas? So if you've got a device that is doing sacral stimulation or something like that, would you, I don't know if this is what you guys have in mind, but would the cosmic system then allow you to say, add on another stimulator or
Yeah.
device within it, so you could augment a person's treatment or therapy over time?
Yes, potentially that is a possibility. And we do hope that over time the cosmic system in its capabilities is expanded by the community, by people doing exactly what you're talking about. Um, there are some there are definitely limits, obviously, to that. And so how do you make a modular retinal implant, for example? I think there are some pretty significant challenges, but there's a lot of applications out there that where a modular system could be a backup option. Now, modular systems are usually not the greatest for a commercial product. There's overhead in the cosmic system. There's a network overhead, the communication, etc. It's useful for certain applications, but for most, there's too much overhead. It's too much capacity, etc. Right? But as a backup system, it works well. So I don't, I know that one of the solutions that people propose to the abandonment problem is, well, just make everyone use the same technology. And that to me is a non-starter, because that's the advantage of these devices, and especially in something like the Spark program, is the access that you have to the nervous system. And so the electrode design, unique electrode designs and things like that, and unique stimulation waveforms and so on. So you can't tell everyone, well, you can only use a standard spinal cord stimulator and that's it. Like, that would be terrible. That would eliminate innovation. Um, there are some things you can do. It'd be great to have standard connectors, and to some extent, there are some standards like that that help. Um, so those are a benefit. But ultimately, I think you can't require everyone to just use the same thing.
Right. Well, thank you very much, Dr. Kilgore, for taking time today to uh, introduce GIVE-A-HAND.tech and
Right.
help us understand and think more deeply about the concepts and the questions and the problems that arise from abandoned medical devices. I really appreciate your time. I'm so glad that you've been part of the Spark program. Congratulations on your retirement. And I look forward to telling people about the RFAs that you guys will issue to help spread the word. So thank
Excellent.
you so much.
Sounds good. Thanks, Sue. I appreciate the opportunity.
All right. Take care.
All right.